Cop laughs at black girl for saying her dad's in special forces, until he walks onto the scene. What happens when a young girl's quiet confidence clashes with the cynicism of a cop who dismisses her every word? Welcome to a story of bravery, prejudice, and karma. In a small town where everyday life seems dull on the surface, one event reveals the crackling tension hidden beneath. You're about to witness a shocking encounter, one that will challenge your perspective on power, standing up for yourself, and the unseen bonds of family. A police officer laughs when a black teen claims her father is in the special forces. But be prepared. Nothing in this world is truly what it seems. It was a hot day in early July in the small town of Greenwood Falls, Virginia. The sun beat down on the old, cracked sidewalks and the ancient red brick facades of the storefronts. People drifted in and out of the shops, picking up groceries or pausing for a moment to gossip with their neighbors. Greenwood Falls was the kind of place that prided itself on community, but like many towns, it had its hidden fissures. Under the smiling veneer of friendly chatter, there lurked silent histories of prejudice, unspoken resentments, and powerful alliances. 14-year-old Naomi Carter was walking home from her summer math tutoring session. She was tall for her age, a little lanky with long braids that swept across her shoulders. Her eyes were warm and curious, forever noticing the small wonders of the town, like the flicker of a neon sign or the petals of a morning glory stretching out by the curb. Naomi was used to seeing the same sights every day. Miss Belinda's bakery, the small hardware store that smelled like sawdust, and the antique shop run by an older couple who wore matching cardigans, even in the summertime. Everything about Greenwood Falls felt predictable, until that fateful afternoon. Naomi was texting her mother to confirm dinner plans, so she almost didn't notice the police cruiser creeping down the street. She heard the rumble of the engine, low and unnerving, like a big cat prowling. By the time she looked up, the car had pulled onto the curb. The door creaked open, and out stepped Officer Dylan Carmichael. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache he was obviously proud of. Naomi had seen him around before, always wearing aviator sunglasses that hid his eyes. She had never talked to him, but she'd overheard enough rumors to know he had a reputation, part overzealous law enforcer, part local bully. His presence set a hush over the block, as though the air molecules themselves felt a pinch of anxiety. Naomi instinctively stepped aside, unsure if she had done anything wrong. She glanced behind her, searching for someone else he might be stopping, but the sidewalk was empty except for her. "Hey," he called out, voice loud and condescending. "You got a minute?" She nodded hesitantly, clutching her phone. "Yes, sir." He scanned her appearance, her braids, her worn sneakers, and the battered backpack slung over her shoulder. "Aren't you in high school?" he asked, eyebrows lifting above the rim of his sunglasses. "Yes, Greenwood High. I'm a freshman," she replied quietly, keeping her tone polite and even. "Then what are you doing wandering around town at this hour?" Naomi swallowed, trying to quell the sudden dryness in her throat. "I just finished my summer math tutoring. I'm going home. My mother's expecting me." Carmichael nodded slowly. "How old are you?" 14. He looked her up and down as though assessing if she was telling the truth. 14, he repeated, then smirked. "Don't you think it's too hot to be walking?" Naomi could sense the tension in his voice, but she didn't understand the reason. "It's okay. I don't live too far from here." Officer Carmichael let out a short, almost mocking laugh. "Well, you're out here, and people get nervous these days when they see someone loitering around." The word loitering hit Naomi like a slap. She was just walking home, minding her own business. Her heart began to pound. "I'm not loitering," she said, forcing her voice not to tremble. "I'm just going home." Carmichael's smirk widened, his mustache pulling back from his lips. "Is your daddy supposed to pick you up or something?" For a brief moment, Naomi hesitated. She rarely spoke about her father's work, especially around Greenwood Falls. People didn't always believe her. Some found it suspicious, others just assumed she was exaggerating. Still, she answered honestly, My father's out of town right now for training. He's in the U.S. Army Special Forces stationed at Fort Bragg," she added, hoping the real base name would validate her. Officer Carmichael let out a laugh, a deep, scornful burst of amusement. "Oh, is that right? Daddy's a big bad soldier, huh?" He tapped his belt, emphasizing the lethal presence of the gun holstered at his hip. "Does he know you're out here wandering?" Naomi stiffened. She hated the tone he used, like he was accusing her of a crime, or mocking her for something she was deeply proud of. Her father, Staff Sergeant Daniel Carter, was a real hero in her eyes. She'd grown up around the hush-hush nature of his deployments, the knowledge that what he did was top secret, important, and dangerous. She had learned not to brag, but it hurt, hearing the sneer in Carmichael's voice. "Yes," she managed. "He's fully aware. He and my mom trust me to handle myself responsibly, sir." Carmichael snorted. "Sounds like a story. I know a thing or two about soldiers. If your father were in the army, you'd have said something to the school by now." Naomi felt her cheeks grow hot. She recalled how her father never made a big deal of his role in the Special Forces, which are often quietly proud but hush about specifics. Also, Greenwood Falls High had her father's contact information on file. There was nothing unusual there. "I'm not lying," she said, her voice quieter but unwavering. He chuckled again, shaking his head. "Yeah, sure. Let's see some ID, wise girl." She instinctively raised an eyebrow. "I'm 14. I don't have a driver's license." The corner of his mouth curled into a shark-like grin. "Right. Then you'll just have to come with me to the station until we can figure this out. We've had some reports of vandalism and theft in the area." Fear leaped into Naomi's chest. "I haven't done anything. I'm not carrying anything except my phone and my math notes. If you suspect me of something, can you just call my mom?" Carmichael ignored her request, motioning with his hand for her to step closer to the cruiser. "We'll straighten it out at the station," he muttered. "Let's go." "But I haven't—" Naomi began to protest, but he silenced her with a glare that burned through his sunglasses. The small, insidious flicker of intimidation was enough to make her throat close up. She wasn't sure what to do. She'd never been in trouble with the law. In fact, she'd never even had a real conversation with a cop, besides the friendly community officers who visited her elementary school years ago. This was new territory, frightening territory. As if on cue, a bystander, Ms. Paula Rodriguez, who ran the local flower shop, emerged from a storefront to see the commotion. "Officer, is everything all right?" she asked politely, but her eyes flitted worriedly to Naomi, whom she knew well. Naomi always stopped by to marvel at the bouquets in the window. Carmichael's tone remained cold. "Everything's fine, ma'am. Just checking on some suspicious activity." Paula looked from him to Naomi, concerned. She seemed to want to say something else, but the officer's imposing stance made her hesitate. The tension hung in the air, thick as the summer heat. Naomi's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Her mother was calling. Before she could accept the call, Carmichael reached for her phone. "Hand that over." She stepped back, alarmed. "It's my mom. Let me just tell her where I am." Her voice was almost pleading now. With a disdainful snort, Carmichael shook his head. "You can do that at the station or not at all." "But—" He reached out and attempted to grip her arm. The intrusion set off Naomi's fight-or-flight response. She jerked away, startled, adrenaline flooding her system. She was terrified of what might happen next. She glanced again at Miss Rodriguez, who was now standing stock still, eyes wide with alarm. Naomi thought of her father's words, how he had taught her the importance of composure in high-pressure situations. "Never let fear freeze you," he'd say. "Breathe, think, and if you need to stand up for yourself, do so calmly." Naomi took a breath. "Officer Carmichael, I'm not resisting, but I don't think I've done anything wrong." He let out a derisive laugh. "You can explain that down at the station. Let's go." He reached for his radio, ignoring the phone buzzing incessantly in Naomi's hand. Suddenly, a strong male voice boomed from across the street. "Hey, step away from her." All heads turned to see a tall African-American man in civilian clothes striding toward them with purpose. He wore a crisp black t-shirt, camouflage pants, and boots, an outfit that was neither casual nor fully uniform. His eyes were intense, filled with fury and protective instinct. Naomi's heart leaped. Though she couldn't see his face fully under the shadow of his baseball cap, she instantly recognized the build, the gait, and the posture. It was her father, Staff Sergeant Daniel Carter, home earlier than expected. For a split second, time itself seemed to slow. The smirk on Officer Carmichael's face twitched, his eyebrows lifting in surprise. Naomi didn't move, relief coursing through her veins. She felt the tension release from her shoulders, even as the next wave of drama loomed overhead. This was only the beginning. Daniel Carter's footsteps hammered across the sidewalk. Naomi had never been so happy to see him in her life. His face was taut with concern and anger, an expression she'd rarely seen off the training fields. Usually her father was gentle, supportive, a man who calmly taught her to ride a bike or read a compass on their hiking trips. But right now, he looked every bit the soldier he was, a protector closing in on a threat. Officer Carmichael turned and placed one hand on his gun, as if anticipating a confrontation. Naomi froze, her eyes flicking between her father and the cop. Panic rushed through her. The last thing she wanted was an escalated scenario where her father might get shot. She'd heard the stories, seen the headlines on the news. Instinctively, she held her breath. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but I suggest you step back," Carmichael barked, adjusting his stance. Daniel kept walking, ignoring the officer's command. He came to stand between Naomi and Carmichael, shielding his daughter. Up close, Carmichael finally got a good look at the badges on the father's camouflage pants. Daniel Carter looked like he'd walked off a recruitment poster. Tall, athletic build, short hair, and intense brown eyes. Despite the sweat on his brow from the scorching July sun, there was a calm readiness in his posture, a kind of measured ferocity that only came from years of high-stakes training. "That's my daughter you're manhandling," Daniel said, voice low and thunderous. "Keep your hands off her." Carmichael narrowed his eyes. "Is that so?" "Well, she was refusing to comply. I heard," Daniel interrupted coldly. "And from what I saw, she didn't do anything wrong." He turned to Naomi, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You all right?" She nodded, trying to hide the tears forming behind her eyes. "Dad, I was just walking home. He tried to take me to the station." Daniel's gaze locked with Carmichael's. "For what crime? Walking?" Carmichael huffed, puffing out his chest. "There have been reports of vandalism in the area. She was acting suspicious." Daniel gave the officer a measured look. "Acting suspicious how? Holding a phone? Talking to you? Being black?" A beat of silence followed, thick with tension. Carmichael's grip on his belt tightened. Miss Rodriguez hovered a few steps away, her face tense with worry. A couple more people emerged from storefronts, drawn by the unfolding spectacle. Greenwood Falls was a small town. Big incidents drew attention like moths to a flame. Carmichael sneered. "Don't try to pull the race card on me, pal. I'm just doing my job. People want us to keep the streets safe." Daniel's jaw flexed. Naomi could sense her father struggling to maintain control. His voice was as firm as granite. "Officer, I'm Staff Sergeant Daniel Carter, U.S. Army Special Forces, stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I've been deployed overseas multiple times. I know the law as much as you do, and I know you have no probable cause to detain my daughter." Carmichael's face twitched. It was as though he was torn between doubling down on his authority or cutting his losses now that he faced a military man with a commanding presence. I need to verify your identity." But his voice wavered. Daniel nodded curtly. "That's fine. Let's call your supervisor. You can confirm my identity and my daughter's in less time than it takes for you to keep harassing her. While you're at it, you can call her mother too. She's worried sick." Naomi's phone was still buzzing in her hand. Daniel gestured for her to answer it. "Go ahead. Talk to your mom. Let her know I'm here." Naomi quickly answered the call, stepping a little aside. "Mom," she whispered. "Dad's here and I'm safe." She paused, listening to the frantic questions on the other end. "Yes, we're still on Main Street. Just come." She heard a click. The call dropped. While Naomi tried to reconnect, Carmichael glared at Daniel. "Fine, let's do this by the book." He reached for his radio and pressed a button, calling for backup. In a clipped tone, he mentioned that he had a situation on Main Street. He mentioned a suspect, Daniel Carter, and asked for immediate assistance to verify ID. Daniel crossed his arms, posture taut as a wire. Naomi could sense the heat radiating off him, the same soldier who had once told her, "Never let a bully see your fear." Yet, despite his anger, he remained calm. He had faced high-stakes missions before. This was a local police officer with a big ego and prejudices simmering beneath the surface. Still, Daniel understood how easily these situations could spiral out of control. Within minutes, another squad car pulled up. Out stepped Officer Karen Phillips, whom Naomi recognized from the local safety seminars at the school. Officer Phillips had a reputation for fairness and kindness. She approached with caution, taking in the scene. Naomi close to tears, Daniel protective and bristling, and Carmichael looking furious. A small crowd had gathered on the edges of the sidewalk. "Officer Phillips," Daniel greeted, exhaling in relief at the sight of a more level-headed cop. "Could you help us sort this out? Officer Carmichael tried to detain my daughter without cause." Phillips glanced at Carmichael, who gave her a sharp nod. He gestured at Daniel. "He's interfering with an investigation. Claims to be Army Special Forces. We need to verify his identity." Phillips looked at Naomi, who she recognized from school visits. "Naomi, you doing okay?" Naomi nodded timidly. "Yes, ma'am. I was just walking home. My dad, he just got here. I promise I didn't do anything illegal." Phillips pulled Carmichael aside for a moment. Their murmured voices carried just enough for Naomi and Daniel to catch fragments. Phillips was asking him if Naomi was a suspect in something. Carmichael insisted she was acting suspicious. Phillips shot him a look that made it clear she was skeptical. Finally, she turned back to Daniel. "Sir, do you have any ID on you?" Daniel pulled out his wallet and produced his military ID. Phillips examined it, nodded, and returned it. "That seems legit, Staff Sergeant Carter. Thank you for cooperating." Carmichael mumbled something under his breath. Phillips overheard and frowned at him. "We'll need to confirm your daughter's identification too, but I'm sure we can handle this without taking her to the station." She gave Carmichael a pointed look. Naomi let out a shaky breath. "I don't have a state-issued ID, but I have my school ID in my backpack if that helps." She pulled it out and showed it to Phillips, who nodded. Phillips turned to Carmichael. "Officer, do we have any actual complaint tying Naomi Carter to a specific crime scene?" Carmichael's eyes flicked around, looking for support that wasn't there. The handful of bystanders stared, disapproval evident on their faces. Miss Rodriguez was lingering, arms crossed over her flower apron, broadcasting her disapproval loud and clear. "Fine," Carmichael growled. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. He returned his gaze to Naomi, and she felt the sting in his glare. "Next time, just comply, girl. We wouldn't have to go through all this." Something snapped in Daniel at that. He stepped forward, voice dangerously low. "She's not a girl to you. She's a minor and she's my daughter. You address her by her name respectfully." Carmichael opened his mouth to retort, but Officer Phillips intervened. "That's enough." She turned to Daniel and Naomi. "I think we've resolved this. Apologies for the confusion, Staff Sergeant Carter, Naomi. You both are free to go. If you want to file a complaint, you can do so at the station or online. I'll include it in the report." Naomi felt tears pressing at the back of her eyes. The sudden relief was overwhelming. She clutched her father's hand. He nodded to Officer Phillips, then turned his gaze on Carmichael once more. "This isn't over," Daniel said, his voice resonating with finality. "You crossed a line." With that, father and daughter walked away. Naomi tossed a quick, grateful glance to Miss Rodriguez, who nodded in solidarity. The bystanders parted to let them pass, many murmuring words of comfort or dismay at what they had just witnessed. Naomi clung to her father's arm as they moved down the block. Her entire body felt as if it were vibrating from the adrenaline. Once they were out of earshot, she whispered, "Dad, thank you." He stopped, turned and gave her a hug so strong she felt the day's terror melting away. "I'll always protect you," he murmured. Then, to lighten the mood, he said, "Besides, it's not like you needed protecting. You were doing fine on your own." Naomi smiled weakly, but the experience had rattled her more deeply than she cared to admit. She could tell it had shaken her father, too. They stood there, father and daughter, in the blazing heat of Greenwood Falls, aware that this incident was the tip of an iceberg of prejudice. Despite the tension, Naomi felt something akin to pride. She had told the cop her dad was Special Forces, and it was true. The look on Carmichael's face had been priceless when Daniel appeared out of nowhere, but in the shadow of that small victory, a storm brewed. Naomi had no idea how quickly the aftermath would escalate, or how many more twists lay in wait. Later that evening, Naomi sat at the dining room table, still tense from the incident. Her mother, Sonia, had prepared a comforting meal, roast chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans, Naomi's favorite. Yet the tension in the air made the food taste bland. Daniel had changed out of his fatigues into casual clothes, but the stiff set of his shoulders revealed he was still simmering inside. Sonia finally broke the silence. "Daniel, are you going to file a complaint against that officer?" He set down his fork, a grim look in his eyes. "I am. I spoke with Officer Phillips briefly after we left. She suggested an official complaint. They might launch an internal investigation, but in a small town like this, I'm not sure how far it'll go." Naomi studied her father's face. He had a small scar above his right eye, a souvenir from a training accident years ago. She noticed how his brow furrowed whenever he was worried. "Dad, I'm sorry I texted you so panicked," she said quietly. "But I didn't know what else to do."
Daniel shook his head. "Never apologize for calling for help. I want you to reach out whenever you feel unsafe. That's what I'm here for." Sonia nodded, giving Naomi's hand a comforting squeeze. "We're proud of you for handling that situation calmly. Some kids might have panicked and ended up in serious trouble. You remembered what your father taught you." Naomi felt a swell of warmth in her chest. "Thanks, Mom, Her throat tightened. He looked at me like I was already guilty, just because I was walking home. An uneasy hush settled again. Finally, Sonia spoke, voice trembling with suppressed anger. "I can't believe it happened here in Greenwood Falls, right in the open. We've lived here for years. This town always felt safe." Daniel shook his head. "Racism can simmer anywhere, Sonia. Doesn't matter how quaint the town looks." He sighed heavily. "But I won't let this go. That officer crossed a line." Naomi glanced at her father. The protective intensity in his expression was clear. He had stared down war zones. He wasn't going to back down from a local bully. But she also saw the flicker of concern in his eyes. Maybe he worried about retaliation, about how others in the police department might close ranks around one of their own. After dinner, Daniel retreated to his home office to file a formal complaint. Naomi washed the dishes with her mother, the clatter of plates echoing the unsettled feelings in her mind. Sonia tried to fill the silence with small talk, but Naomi's thoughts kept returning to that moment when Carmichael had laughed in her face. She wanted to make sure the truth came out. She wanted to protect other kids who might end up in the same situation. The following days were a blur of paperwork and waiting. Daniel submitted his complaint, citing racial profiling and unnecessary use of force. To strengthen their case, Miss Rodriguez and a few other witnesses wrote statements. Officer Phillips confirmed that Carmichael lacked probable cause for an arrest or detainment. The news trickled across the small town, setting tongues wagging. Naomi overheard gossip at the local grocery store and by the lockers at summer tutoring. People took sides. Some were outraged at Carmichael's behavior. Others defended him, insisting he was just doing his job. As the Carters waited for a response, life pressed on. Daniel resumed his routine of morning runs, going to the base for weekend drills and specialized training sessions. Naomi kept attending her math tutoring, albeit with a knot of anxiety coiling in her belly every time she walked down Main Street. At times, the memory of Carmichael's sneer would rear up in her mind, and she'd quickly look around to make sure no squad car was following her. Then, about a week after the incident, a letter arrived in the mail, summoning Daniel to the Greenwood Falls Police Department for a hearing regarding the complaint. "They want me to appear before an internal review board," he told Sonia and Naomi, holding the letter with a mixture of trepidation and determination. "It's in 3 days." "I'll be there with you," Sonia said firmly. Naomi took a breath. "I want to go too." Her father hesitated. "Naomi, I appreciate that, but you might feel uncomfortable answering questions in a formal setting." She squared her shoulders. "I want them to see me, to hear from me. I was there. I should have a voice." Daniel exchanged a proud glance with Sonia, then nodded. "All right." On the day of the hearing, the Carters arrived at the station, wearing their Sunday best. Daniel wore a blazer over his pressed khaki pants, a small pin on his lapel that marked him as Army Special Forces. Naomi dressed conservatively in a simple knee-length skirt and a white blouse. Sonia wore a modest dress that accentuated her quiet elegance. They walked in together, heads held high. The station buzzed with its usual activity. Phone lines ringing, officers typing up reports, people waiting to file complaints. A uniformed lieutenant guided them to a sterile conference room with bland cream walls. Seated at a long table were 3 members of the police department's internal review board. Chief Bradley Harris, a stern, middle-aged man with steely gray eyes. Captain Anita Lowry, who had a reputation for fairness, and a local community representative, Miss Edna Winslow, an older woman known for advocating social justice in Greenwood Falls. Officer Carmichael was already there, accompanied by an attorney. He shot a glare at the Carters as they took their seats. Naomi felt her pulse quicken, but she resisted the urge to look away. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Chief Harris cleared his throat. "Let's proceed. Staff Sergeant Carter, you filed a complaint alleging racial profiling and unwarranted detainment of your daughter Naomi Carter by Officer Dylan Carmichael. Is that correct?" "Yes," Daniel said calmly, sliding a copy of the formal complaint across the table. "Officer Carmichael, your attorney filed a rebuttal. You claim you had reason to suspect Naomi Carter of vandalism in the area. Any additional statements?" Captain Lowry asked. Carmichael's attorney, a lean man with slicked back hair, jumped in. Officer Carmichael acted on multiple reports of break-ins. He saw Miss Carter loitering by a closed storefront and reasonably approached her to ask questions. She refused to comply, thereby necessitating further inquiry. Naomi was about to protest, but Daniel caught her eye, silently telling her to hold her tongue until she was addressed. The attorney continued. Additionally, Miss Carter made an unlikely claim that her father was Special Forces, which raised suspicion. Officer Carmichael attempted to confirm her identity in the interest of public safety. The words stung, but Naomi reminded herself that she finally had a platform to speak. Chief Harris turned to her. "Naomi, in your own words, can you describe what happened that afternoon?" Naomi inhaled, forcing herself to stay composed. She recounted how she was walking home from tutoring, how Carmichael approached her without explanation, demanded ID that she couldn't provide because she was only 14, and insisted on taking her to the station. She also explained how he laughed at her mention of her father's Special Forces background and how he tried to seize her phone when her mom called. Throughout her testimony, Carmichael stared at the table, occasionally shaking his head. The tension in the room thickened, especially when Daniel described stepping in to de-escalate. When they finished, Miss Winslow leaned forward. "Officer Carmichael, do you dispute any specifics of Naomi's recollection?" Carmichael mumbled. Yes, I do. I only intended to take her to the station after she refused to provide identification. If she'd cooperated, I wouldn't have needed to escalate." Naomi bit her lip. "I said I was 14.
You can't expect a driver's license from a 14-year-old. I offered my mother's phone number, but you refused to call." The attorney interjected. "Officer Carmichael claims you were disrespectful and non-compliant." Naomi's cheeks burned with indignation. "I never disrespected him. I was scared. I asked him to call my mom." Chief Harris held up a hand. "Let's not turn this into a back-and-forth argument. We'll take everything into consideration." Daniel nodded. "All we want is accountability. Our daughter shouldn't be profiled or forcibly detained for walking down the street." Carmichael's attorney eyed Daniel. "Staff Sergeant Carter, you have a distinguished military background. Surely you understand the need for vigilance in uncertain times." Daniel fixed him with a cold stare. Vigilance, yes. Harassment, no. With that, the review board adjourned to deliberate. The Carters were asked to wait in a corridor lined with chairs. Anxiety weighed down on them like lead. Sonia sat close to Naomi, holding her hand, while Daniel paced the corridor. Carmichael and his attorney stood off to the side, occasionally whispering in hushed tones. After an agonizing half hour, the board called everyone back in. Chief Harris cleared his throat. "We've carefully considered both sides. Based on the witness statements, security camera footage from nearby shops, and the accounts presented here, we find that Officer Carmichael lacked sufficient probable cause to detain Naomi Carter. We also find his conduct fell below departmental standards." Naomi felt a surge of relief. She wanted to jump up and cheer, but she stayed composed, waiting to hear the rest. Chief Harris continued, "Officer Carmichael, we're placing you on administrative leave pending further investigation of misconduct. We appreciate your service, but we cannot condone discriminatory policing." A flash of anger passed across Carmichael's face. He looked like he wanted to shout, but his attorney placed a hand on his shoulder, cautioning silence. Chief Harris cleared his throat again. "This is an internal matter. The Carter family has the right to pursue legal action if they choose. For now, we'll conclude this session." As soon as the meeting ended, Officer Carmichael stormed out, shooting a hateful glare at the Carters. Naomi's stomach twisted. She couldn't ignore the cold promise of revenge in his eyes. She didn't doubt that he blamed her, and her father, for everything that had just unfolded. Before they exited, Miss Winslow approached the family. Her kind, wrinkled face was somber. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this," she said. "Thank you for having the courage to speak up. You might have made things safer for others in this town, especially kids like Naomi." Naomi managed a small smile. "Thank you, ma'am." The drive home was quieter than the Carters expected. They'd won the first round, but the victory felt fraught. Daniel had that look in his eye, battle-ready, as if anticipating the next fight. Sonia gently placed a hand on his arm as he drove. "We did the right thing." He nodded. "I know, but I don't think Carmichael's the type to walk away quietly." Naomi stared out the window at the passing streets of Greenwood Falls. The quaint houses and manicured lawns looked the same, but she felt changed. She had confronted a bully in uniform and won a measure of justice. Yet the knot in her stomach told her that this story was far from over. The fallout of Carmichael's administrative leave rippled through Greenwood Falls. Some community members commended the police department for taking allegations of misconduct seriously. Others claimed Carmichael was being unfairly targeted in a witch hunt. Social media exploded with heated comments. Naomi tried to avoid reading them, but curiosity got the better of her at times. She saw supportive messages praising her courage, and hateful ones claiming she was just a troublemaker who'd ruined an honest cop's career. Daniel, meanwhile, was back at Fort Bragg for a short training rotation. He called home each night, checking on Naomi and Sonia. He sensed the tension from afar and warned them both to stay vigilant. "Just lock up carefully," he'd say. "Call me if anything seems off." 2 weeks after the hearing, Naomi was biking home from a friend's house one evening just after dusk. The summer air was warm, cicadas singing in the distance. She cut through the park, where the streetlights cast pools of light on the path. She decided to stop for a moment, checking her phone. Her mother had texted, "Dinner's almost ready. Where are you?" Naomi typed a quick response. "On my way, 5 minutes,"
and hit send. That's when she noticed a figure standing under a nearby lamppost, head turned in her direction. Her heart gave a jolt of unease. She squinted, but it was too dark to see clearly. The figure stepped forward into the light. Naomi's stomach clenched. She recognized the silhouette of Officer Carmichael. He was no longer in uniform, but she remembered his stocky frame, his face like carved stone. Her instincts told her to leave, quickly. She hopped back on her bike, pedaling hard. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him start to move as well. She didn't dare look back. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she steered onto a side street, cutting across a corner store parking lot in an effort to lose him. After a few tense moments, she dared to glance behind her. He was gone. She didn't breathe easy until she rolled into her driveway, heart pounding. Sonia stood at the front door, waving. "Naomi, you're late, sweetie." Naomi dismounted, trying to mask her trembling. "Sorry, Mom," she said. "I just took a shortcut." She decided not to mention seeing Carmichael in the park. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he was just out for a walk. She didn't want to worry her mother unnecessarily. But the next day, while heading to the local library, Naomi caught sight of him again. He was in a black sedan, driving slowly down the street. When he saw her, the car accelerated, and he disappeared around the bend. A chill skittered down her spine. This time she told her mother. Sonia's face darkened with fear. "I'll call your father right now." Daniel, upon hearing the news, was furious. "That's stalking," he said over the phone. "I'm coming home this weekend. We'll document every encounter. If it continues, we'll consider a restraining order." Naomi's heart hammered as she spoke to him, a mixture of relief that he was taking it seriously and dread at the idea of a new confrontation. She remembered the hateful glare in Carmichael's eyes as he left the review board session. A swirl of questions haunted her. What if he tries something worse? How far will he go? The weekend arrived, and Daniel drove back late Friday night. Naomi was on the couch hugging a pillow when her father walked in. His presence alone made her feel safer. Sonia was equally relieved to have him around. They sat together, discussing next steps. "We should let Officer Phillips know," Daniel said. "She seemed fair. Maybe they can keep an eye on him." Sonia nodded. "I'll call her tomorrow. But Daniel, do you think he might retaliate physically?" Daniel took a measured breath. "He lost face and he's bitter. We have to assume he's capable of escalation. But we'll be ready." Naomi felt a mix of apprehension and pride. This was her father, Special Forces, well-trained in defense. She knew how to lock the doors and set the alarm. She knew how to dial 911 if she felt threatened. Yet she couldn't shake the sense that Carmichael was a snake, lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. Saturday morning dawned bright and hot. Daniel rose early to go for a run around the neighborhood, wanting to survey everything. Naomi tagged along on her bike, feeling safer with her father at her side. The morning passed quietly enough. No sign of Carmichael's black sedan, no ominous watchers from across the street. By midday, the tension began to ease. Daniel set down his burger, shoulders tense like coiled steel. Sonia glanced around, anxious. Naomi felt a jolt of fear. The diner was mostly empty, just a couple in another booth and an elderly man sipping coffee at the counter. If Carmichael wanted a confrontation, this was the moment. "Evening, Carter," Carmichael said, voice dripping with sarcasm. He ignored Sonia and Naomi, focusing on Daniel. "How's life now that you've made me look like a fool?" Daniel didn't rise to the bait. "I'm here with my family. We're having dinner." Carmichael glanced at Naomi, a shadow of anger flickering in his eyes. "I see the little liar is still telling stories. Heard you saw me around town. Thought you might run crying to your daddy again." Naomi's voice quivered. "I saw you following me." Carmichael let out a humorless chuckle. "I live here. I walk and drive around. It's a free country, you know." Sonia placed a hand on Naomi's arm as though to steady her. Daniel's stare bored into Carmichael. "You have no business being here. Leave us alone." The ex-cop sniffed. "Well, you see, I do have business. I'm hungry. This is a diner. I can eat wherever I want." He took a half step closer, looming.
You might have gotten me temporarily sidelined, but it won't stick. The department needs real men, not some pity party story for a mouthy teenager. I'm appealing the board's decision, and if you think the rest of the force is on your side, well, you're in for a surprise. The tension was so thick Naomi could barely breathe. She thought her father might leap out of the booth at any second, but Daniel clenched his jaw, staying seated. You're harassing us, Carmichael. Harassing? I'm just stating facts. And guess what? He leaned in, voice dropping low. I have friends, powerful friends, who think you and your brat should learn a lesson in respect. Watch your back, soldier. That did it. Daniel stood up abruptly, forcing Carmichael to back away from the booth. The two men squared off like boxers in a ring, eyes locked, neither blinking. Naomi's chest hammered. She wanted to scream for them to stop, but she was frozen in place. Sonia rose too, voice trembling. Leave us alone or I'm calling the police. Carmichael turned that smug smile on her. Go ahead. Who do you think they'll believe? The decorated hero or the guy who served this community for years? He shrugged in feigned innocence. I'm just here to grab a burger. Daniel slowly sat back down, anger radiating off him in waves. Get your burger then. Just stay away from my family. Carmichael chuckled darkly. Sure thing, big guy. With that, he walked to the counter, placing an order to go. His eyes occasionally flicked over his shoulder, and Naomi felt each glance like a venomous dart. Within a few minutes, he grabbed his paper bag, turned on his heel, and strolled out. The diner's bell jangled in his wake. For several seconds, the Carters sat in stunned silence. The older man at the counter gave them a sympathetic look. The couple in the adjacent booth whispered to each other, clearly unsettled by the exchange. Daddy, Naomi managed after a long pause. He threatened us. Daniel's jaw twitched. I know. He raked a hand through his short hair, then shook his head. We'll handle it, one step at a time. But as they finished their meal in uneasy silence, Naomi sensed that this was more than a passing threat. Carmichael had a plan, a vendetta. The Carters had won the official battle, but a new, more dangerous war was just beginning. Daniel kept up his protective routines. He and Sonia installed a new security camera on the front porch. They double-checked window locks and taught Naomi a few more self-defense moves. She appreciated the measures but felt a constant wave of anxiety nibbling at the edges of her consciousness. One particularly hot Friday night, Daniel was scheduled to head back to base for a weekend training. He sat Naomi down before leaving. I hate leaving you and your mom, he said, voice heavy with regret. But I can't skip this session. It's mandatory. I'll be back Sunday night. Naomi forced a reassuring smile. We'll be fine, Dad. The cameras are up. Mom's here. Daniel nodded. Keep your phone on, okay? Any sign of trouble, you call me, then 911. Sonia gave him a tight hug. Be safe, we love you. Naomi edged to the doorway. The bright white porch light illuminated something dark and dripping on the welcome mat. Her stomach churned. It was a large black plastic bag, half concealed in shadow. A sickly metallic smell filled the air. Sonia gasped, recoiling. Is that blood? Naomi swallowed bile, stepping closer. She noticed the package was leaking some dark red fluid, forming a small puddle near the door. A wave of horror tore through her. She reached for her mother's hand, which was shaking. They backed away, locking the door again. Within minutes, flashing blue and red lights washed across their lawn. 2 police officers arrived. Neither was Carmichael, thank God. Naomi recognized Officer Phillips and another officer she didn't know. Phillips examined the bag with caution, wearing latex gloves. She found inside it a dead animal, a raccoon possibly, its body slashed, an unmistakable message of intimidation. The sight made Naomi's stomach flip. She turned away, pressing her hand over her mouth. Sonia wrapped an arm around her, trying to steady her. Officer Phillips looked grim. I'm sorry you had to see that, she said softly. This is obviously meant to scare you. We'll file a report and have someone watch your house tonight. Sonia's voice shook as she responded. We know who's behind this. Phillips's gaze hardened. I had a feeling. Let's keep it official. You suspect Carmichael? Naomi found her voice. Yes. He's threatened us before. He's been following me. Phillips scribbled on a notepad. We'll look into it. But you need to be cautious. Don't confront him alone. Lock your doors. Stay in touch with us. I'll personally check in tomorrow. She paused, looking at the horrifying bag again. I'm truly sorry. 2 weeks of tension passed in a haze of patrol visits, security checks, and Daniel's hypervigilance. The chilling memory of the bloodied package cast a pall over the Carter household. Naomi went about her summer schedule, but fear dogged her steps. She rarely went out alone. Sonia drove her to tutoring or the library, and Daniel accompanied her on bike rides. Officer Phillips kept her promise of extra patrols, but Naomi wondered how long that could last. The police were stretched thin with real crimes, and soon they might not have resources for a full-time watch on one family. Then, late on a stormy afternoon, events took a shocking turn. Naomi and her parents had just finished an early dinner when the landline phone rang. Sonia answered it, her expression darkening as she listened. She mouthed, "It's Miss Rodriguez from the flower shop," to Daniel and Naomi. "Calm down, Paula," Sonia said, voice tense. "What's going on?" She paused, eyes going wide. "We'll be right there." She hung up. Something happened at Miss Rodriguez's flower shop. She saw Carmichael lurking around back. She thinks he might be trying to break in. Daniel jumped up. "Let's call Phillips. Maybe we can catch him in the act." Sonia dialed Officer Phillips's number, but it went straight to voicemail. The station's main line rang and rang, evidently swamped. "They must be busy," Sonia said, frustration mounting. Daniel grabbed his keys. "We're wasting time. Let's go. We'll stay outside the shop, call the police from there. Maybe we can corner him." Naomi's heart fluttered with dread. "Dad, are you sure?" He nodded, jaw set. "Yes, this might be our chance to get him red-handed. If he's bold enough to break into a store, we have to stop him before anyone gets hurt." Sonia hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But we'll stay in the car, and if we see anything, we call 911 immediately." Naomi grabbed her phone and followed her parents to the car. The sky was gunmetal gray, rumbling with distant thunder. Rain misted the windshield as they drove toward Main Street. The roads were slick and nearly empty. Most folks hunkered down at home. They turned onto the block where Miss Rodriguez's flower shop stood. The store's sign, a bright pink lotus, gleamed in the dim light. At first glance, everything appeared still. The shop was dark, closed for the evening. Then Naomi spotted it, a flicker of movement behind the building, near the back alley. "Dad there," she whispered, pointing. Daniel parked a short distance away and cut the engine. "Stay here. Keep the doors locked." Sonia grabbed his arm. "Daniel, be careful." He nodded grimly, stepping out into the drizzle. Naomi watched him slip around the corner, hugging the side of the building. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drumbeat. She clutched her phone, ready to dial 911 at the slightest sign of trouble. A tense minute passed, then 2. The rain pattered softly on the car roof. Naomi strained to see any signs of a struggle or commotion. Finally, she caught a glimpse of her father creeping back into view. He motioned for them to come closer. Sonia shifted the car into gear and eased it down the alley. Naomi's pulse hammered. In the headlights, she saw Daniel crouched by a side door, which was slightly ajar. Broken glass littered the threshold. He quietly opened the passenger door, leaning in. "He's inside," Daniel whispered. "I can see a flashlight moving around. I'm calling 911 now." Naomi's eyes widened. "Is Miss Rodriguez in there?" "No. Paula left when she spotted him," Sonia said, worry lining her features. "She's probably home, scared out of her mind." Daniel spoke to the dispatcher, explaining the break-in in hushed tones. The operator confirmed units were on their way. "They'll be here soon," Daniel said, ending the call. "We just need to keep an eye on him so he doesn't slip away." Naomi's vision blurred with tears, terror gripping her. Sonia was shaking, her fingers digging into the steering wheel. She seemed torn between wanting to rush out to help Daniel and staying put for Naomi's sake. Daniel stood tall, hands spread, calm in the face of Carmichael's swirling rage. "Put the gun down. Let's talk this out." You still have a chance to do the right thing. Carmichael's shoulders heaved with ragged breaths. The right thing? He spat on the ground. All I see is me losing everything because of a lying little girl who made me out to be a monster. Daniel's voice resonated with authority. You made your own choices, harassing my daughter, leaving that disgusting package at our door. Carmichael's eyes flashed. You can't prove I did that. Maybe not yet, but the cops are on their way, and they'll see you broke in here. Is that what you want? Lightning lit the sky, illuminating Carmichael's features. His face was twisted with desperation. Naomi had never seen such unhinged hatred. He raised the gun, pointing it at Daniel's chest. I've got nothing left to lose. Time seemed to slow. Naomi let out a strangled cry. Sonia fumbled at the car door, but Naomi grabbed her arm. Mom, no! She whispered urgently. They couldn't rush out there, not when Carmichael had a gun trained on Daniel. Daniel's own hand edged toward his waistband. Naomi remembered that he too was often armed. But did he have his weapon now? He was off duty from the base, she wasn't sure. Rain pelted the alley in a sheet of water. Daniel's voice was steady. I'm warning you, don't fire that gun. Carmichael sneered. Or what? Then came the flash of motion. Daniel lunged to the side, simultaneously drawing his concealed handgun from inside his waistband. He shouted, Drop it! His posture was that of a trained professional, a soldier who had faced far deadlier situations. Carmichael, startled by Daniel's sudden move, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked the night air like a thunderclap. Naomi's scream caught in her throat. She saw a splash of sparks from the muzzle, a plume of gunpowder in the rain. The bullet whizzed past Daniel's shoulder, hitting the brick wall behind him, sending shards of mortar flying. Before Carmichael could fire again, Daniel steadied his aim. Drop it, or I will shoot, he warned, voice hard as steel. Carmichael hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if weighing his chances. Then he pointed the gun at Daniel again. This time Daniel pulled his trigger first. Bang! The sound reverberated through the alley. Carmichael's body jerked, the gun clattering from his hand. He staggered back, clutching his shoulder where Daniel's bullet struck. Pain twisted his face. He collapsed to his knees, cursing and groaning. Blood seeped between his fingers. Naomi realized she was hyperventilating, tears streaking down her cheeks. Sonia threw open the car door. Stay here, she commanded Naomi, then rushed out into the rain. Officer Phillips's cruiser squealed onto the scene, lights splashing color across the wet walls. She and her partner leaped out, guns drawn. Hands up, they shouted, only to see Carmichael already on the ground, Daniel's gun trained on him. Daniel carefully set his weapon on the ground, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. He fired first, I shot to disarm him. Phillips and her partner approached cautiously, kicking Carmichael's gun aside. They cuffed him despite his wounded shoulder, calling for an ambulance. Carmichael spewed curses at Daniel, at the cops, at everyone. You'll pay for this, he snarled, though his bravado was hollow. Naomi stumbled out of the car, ignoring Sonia's protests, and ran into Daniel's arms. He held her tightly, rain-soaked and trembling. Are you hurt? He asked, voice thick with concern. She shook her head, tears mingling with raindrops on her cheeks. No, Dad. You saved us. Sonia wrapped them both in a frantic hug. Officer Phillips approached, her expression a mixture of relief and shock. We'll need to get statements, but from what we saw, this was self-defense. He shot first? Daniel nodded. Yes, the bullets lodged in the wall. Phillips scanned the damage, then looked at Carmichael writhing on the ground as her partner applied pressure to the wound. He'll go away for a long time, especially if we link him to the other harassment incidents. Good work, Staff Sergeant. Her tone was laced with relief. An ambulance arrived and paramedics loaded Carmichael onto a stretcher. He was still cursing, threatening legal action, but the conviction was gone from his voice. Daniel watched silently, his arm around Naomi and Sonia. The storm raged on above them, but Naomi felt an odd sense of calm, as if a final cord of tension had been released. Officer Phillips beckoned them to her cruiser to give official statements. As Carmichael was driven away, Naomi couldn't help feeling a rush of complicated emotions. Horror at how close they'd come to lethal violence, gratitude that her father's training had saved them, and relief that Carmichael was finally caught red-handed. The man who mocked her, who threatened her, who left that ghastly intimidation at their door, he was done. The cycle of fear and harassment had come full circle, and he was left to face the legal consequences of his own actions. Hard karma had indeed hit back. In the days that followed, Officer Carmichael faced multiple charges: break-in, assault with a deadly weapon, and stalking. A lengthy prison sentence loomed, and the people of Greenwood Falls rallied behind the Carter family. Miss Rodriguez offered free bouquets for a month. Strangers thanked Naomi and her parents for standing up to injustice. Life slowly settled back into a peaceful rhythm, but the Carters would never forget how a single spark of prejudice could ignite a wildfire of chaos. Yet through courage and unity, they emerged stronger. Naomi discovered the power of her own voice. Daniel reaffirmed his role as both father and protector, and Sonia stood firm as the unwavering heart of the family. In the end, justice prevailed, and one small town learned that no one is above accountability. If you found this story inspiring or eye-opening, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement helps spread the message that we must stand up against bullying and bigotry, wherever it appears. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.